Week 7 of the fantasy football season. And here's a few defense DST units I looked at on the wire this week. The first one, the Indianapolis Colts. So the Colts, not a great game in Week 6, where I thought they'd be better in the top 10 in Week 6. 27 points allowed, 4 sacks, and a fumble recovery. But right now, Week 7, a pretty decent matchup at Tennessee. A team that they know pretty well, even though in Week 4 it didn't go all that well for this Colt defense. 24 points allowed and 3 sacks. But right here, Week 7 at Tennessee, I think they can make a few plays. Obviously, Derrick Henry is the guy to stop, and he's the engine to the offense over there in Tennessee. So if this Colt defense could stop him, I think they could have some success versus Ryan Tannehill. And this Colt team now, I know it's been 2 tough ball games, but they've won 2 in a row and 3 out of 4, and they're starting to get going. And this defense is available in 63% of fantasy leagues, and they're hoping to get Leonard back as well. Week 2, the next defense is the Miami Dolphins. So the Dolphins here, this is a matchup-based defensive week here for Miami. Tua Tagovailoa should be back. And Week 7, they got the Pittsburgh Steelers, where it looks like Mitchell Trubisky is probably going to start this game after Kenny Pickett went out with a concussion. So the last few weeks, this defense hasn't done much. Miami's free-falling now with the injuries and stuff, losing 3 in a row. But Tua should be back in the game. Pittsburgh offense hasn't generated much, and now they're going back to Trubisky probably with the injury here. And the Dolphins right now, I think they can make a few plays in this ball game. Available right now in 84% of fantasy leagues as a 1-week ad on the wire. I think it's a decent play this week. The next defense is the Las Vegas Raiders. So the Raiders, another defense, as a 1-week ad once again here for Week 7 with a good matchup versus the Houston Texans. That obviously they got one of the worst offenses in the league here is Houston on the season. So this Raider defense, they really haven't done much this season. Won 1 good ball game in Week 4 versus Denver. 23 points allowed, 3 sacks, a pick 6, and a fumble recovery touchdown in that one. So right here, they're coming off the bye week. Here's Vegas. They're rested up. It's a home game versus a weak Houston offense. I think they could get to Davis Mills a few times in this ball game. And this Raider defense, they got some decent players, but they just give up a lot of points and been in a lot of shootouts so far this season. But right now, available 98% of fantasy leagues. I would give them an ad this week. The next defense is the Cincinnati Bengals. So the Bengals, a lot of people picked them up for this matchup at New Orleans. They didn't do anything for fantasy. 26 points allowed and a sack in the ball game. So right now, available still in 64% of fantasy leagues. And they are 1-week ad once again, as well as Cincinnati, with a matchup here versus the Atlanta Falcons. Right now, Cincinnati, they're only a defense you would want to use, obviously, in ball games where it's going to be a good matchup, and that's what I think it could be with Atlanta. I know Marcus Mariota the last couple weeks here has been playing better football, but right now I think this Bengal team going back home now after 2 road games where they were grinded out games, 1 tough loss at Baltimore and then beat New Orleans in Week 6 in a comeback victory. Week 7, they get back home. They could get comfortable here versus Atlanta. And Mariota, we know, is not that great of a quarterback where they can make a few plays this week. And the 5th and final defense I look to get on the wire here is the New York Jets. So this Jet defense, they've been playing great football, especially the last few weeks here. And that's why they've been winning games now, is this Jet team running the football and playing great defense. And they made Aaron Rodgers look like a basic quarterback in Week 6. 10 points allowed, 4 sacks, a fumble recovery in that one with a touchdown and 2 block kicks. So right here, this Jet defense, they're hungry. They got a lot of young guys on the defense. Williams, Sauce Gardner, he's playing good football. And they got a good matchup Week 7 at Denver. Russell Wilson, he hasn't looked good all season. We'll see what he does tonight. Is Wilson versus the Los Angeles Chargers. But this Jet defense, they're making plays in the last few weeks here. They've been one of the better defenses in fantasy football. Week 4, Pittsburgh, 12 fantasy points. Week 5 versus Miami, 9. And then Week 6 at Green Bay with 20, like I said. So right here with a good matchup, Week 7 at Denver. They could be a top defense to add on the wire this week. Available in 98% of fantasy leagues. That's a few defense DST units I looked at on the wire here for Week 7 of the fantasy football season.